Anchoring is a simple and logical part of boating, but you'd be amazed at how many times I've seen boaters make mistakes. From boats drifting to shore to completely losing their anchors, anchoring is a simple task that you do not want to mess up. Having spent countless days in anchorages, the most common mistake I see boaters make is not properly setting their anchor. This can lead to drifting and, in worst case scenarios, losing your vessel. One of the most common anchors you'll find on a boat is the Fluke anchor. This is a good all-arounder, but mainly thrives in sand and mud. The reason this is such a good anchor is because it hits all the key attributes in what makes an anchor grip the bottom. For starters, when it falls, if it lands on its side here, these long prongs will make it fall flat. Then, once the anchor's flat, its big flukes, where it gets its name, dig into the sand, and the large surface area holds the bottom. Another good all-around anchor is the claw, or the Bruce, which excels in rock and reef bottoms. The claw is a popular anchor because it has a lot of the same attributes as the Fluke. It has a big surface area down here to grip the bottom, but its L shape makes it perfect for storage on bowsprits of vessels. Lastly, we have the mushroom anchor. These little guys are most commonly found on inflatable boats and are popular due to their utility with moorings and buoys. They work really well in inland waterways, and they grab both sand and mud. Instead of using big surface area to hold you to the bottom, it uses its weight, which makes it very heavy for its size, but easy to store. That's why it's very popular among light craft. Now that we've gone over the anchors, let's talk about your rode and chain, which are equally as important in making sure that your boat is set. There are two types of anchoring setups you can use depending on the size of your vessel. One of them being using only chain, and the other being chain with rode. Let's start with chain with rode. Chain is an integral part in setting your anchor. Without it, you'll be pulling up on the anchor instead of horizontal to the bottom of the ocean. Chain with rode is exactly how it sounds, and is very common for vessels under 40 feet. What it is a section of line attached to a bit of chain, which is then attached to your anchor. This is a great setup because it's light and allows you to retrieve your anchor by hand. All chain is also exactly what it sounds like. It's all chain connected to your anchor. This is very common on larger vessels that have the equipment and the ability to handle the extra weight. Regardless of which setup you have, it's always going to include chain, and that's because chain acts as a weight which keeps your anchor pulled in the right direction across the bottom, and without it, your line would just pull straight up on the anchor and you'd come loose. And if you're wondering how big your anchor needs to be, you can never go too large. However, for most boaters, a pound of anchor per foot of your vessel will do just fine. Now that we know we have the right equipment, let's do an anchoring 101. We're over a sandy bottom here, so our Fluke anchor will be great for this. The first step in anchoring is your approach. So when you come into an anchorage that you find safe, make sure that your bow is pointed into the wind. The wind will predominantly determine which direction your boat faces. Then, once you determine your drop zone, you need to figure out how much chain or rode to put out to make sure you can securely anchor. You do this by taking your depth, adding the height of your bow, and multiplying it by 3 for chain and by 7 for chain and rode. That number is called your scope. And what your scope does is it guarantees that if the wind picks up or if there are any waves, that your anchor will still hold at a good angle to the bottom and not lift up in case your line is completely taut. All right, so now let's drop our line. We're in 15 feet of water and the bow is about 3 feet above that. So we want to put out 18 times 7. If we round up to 20, we want to put out about 140 feet of chain and rode. As you drop, it's good to know how much line you're putting out by adding indicators into the braid. That way, if you put them at every 15 feet, 20 feet, 25 feet, you know how much line you're putting out. Now that we've got all of our line out that we need, we'll tie it off to our cleat, and we'll head back to the helm to set the anchor. Setting the anchor is pretty simple, but you need to do it very gingerly so you don't hurt any of your equipment. The basic idea is to back up until you feel your anchor hook into the sand. I like to do this with small bits of throttle at a time. That way, when the anchor hooks, it doesn't too aggressively stop the vessel. If you're unable to feel the boat come to a stop, you'll know you're set when your line comes taut and your boat starts to swing in the direction with all the other boats in the anchorage facing into the wind. Make sure when you come set that you give your boat some time to adjust and make sure that you're really in the sand before turning off your engine. So you successfully set your anchor and it's time to pull it up and head home now. But you can't get it up for the life of you. Don't cut your line just yet. I've got a few tips for you to try to get you and your anchor home safe. The first tip is really simple. You're just going to try to pull your anchor up from different directions. You can do this by maneuvering your boat to the other side of the anchor that you set it at. But be really careful when doing this because you don't want to accidentally wrap up your anchor line in your prop. Another slick pro tip is the zip line release trick. The zip tie release trick is pretty simple. Instead of attaching your chain to your anchor back here at the more common position, you attach it up here at the top. Then once attached, you can use zip ties or metal twine to attach the chain back here to the more common location. That way, in case your anchor won't come up this way, you can break the zip tie and your anchor will release and come up in this direction. Make sure whatever you use has the right braking strength though. I don't usually do this trick unless I know that I have a high likelihood of getting stuck in the bottom that I'm in. So now that you have all your anchoring tips down, you can avoid being a Rodney Dangerfield.